So you have all your beans and rice stored, you have your home canned goods, your store-bought canned goods, your dehydrated goods, freeze-dried goods. I mean, you are ready or almost have reached your long-term food goal. But have you thought about spices? What have you done to store spices? Believe me, food would be so bland without spices. It's just, I can't even think about not having salt or pepper in the food I eat. And garlic, I love garlic. Oh yeah, and hot peppers. Anyway, I wouldn't want to eat such bland food. It would be like eating hospital food, I think. Ugh. Anyway, I have came up with a spice plan that I call the 3 E's. And 1 is every day. 2 is extended, and 3 is eternity. Now let me explain each of the E's. How do you store your everyday spices? Most of us want them kind of close to us when we're cooking. I know some have pull-out drawers where they have them lined, others have them on shelves or racks. For me, I have these 2 right here, turnstiles, and they each hold 20 spices, and they hold quite a bit. Like here's the allspice, and of course, you know me, they're in alphabetical order, starting with allspice and ending with thyme. And some of these spices are ones that I grew in my garden and then dried and ground myself, such as the chili peppers, the habanero peppers, and the ghost peppers, and garlic powder I made myself, and onion powder. Now you have to be careful if you store your spices too close to your stove or your refrigerator, any place that is warm or fully lit or has moisture. Your spices will not last as long if that's true. Now of course salt, it's a big container like this. Yes, we use a lot of salt. Luckily I have low blood pressure. And this is kept close to where I cook, the stove, because it's used all the time, and warmth actually helps it not cake up. So I'm saying spices throughout this video, but it could be herbs, seasonings, whatever. I'm calling everything a spice because that's so much easier. And spices like this store from 1 to 2 years, they say, and then they'll start losing their potency, because most of spices have their taste and their aroma based on plant oils, and these oils will oxidize, and pretty soon you have a tasteless spice. Once a year you should test your spices. You want to smell them, and it still smells like basil. You can put a little bit in your hand and then crush it. That really brings out the flavor. And then you can also do the tongue test. Yeah, I guess it's basil, all right. If it starts to not taste much like basil, or there isn't much aroma, then it's time to replace your spice. Whole spices last longer than the ground spices. Like here is whole nutmeg, and it can last 5 years, and you just grind it as you need it. And the same here with black peppercorn. And there's a lot of other ones too that you can get in the whole format rather than the ground format. Now if you do that though, you have to make sure you have something that can actually grind them. Coffee grinder can be used for a lot of spices. Won't usually work for nutmeg, however. That is really, really a hard nut. Or there are hand cranking ones you can use, or the old way was with that mortar and pestle. But you want to have something on hand if you're using the whole spices. This is a little grinder, hand grinder, that I picked up on Amazon. I think it was about $15. And it's plastic, so it's not really well made, but let me lift it off. you put the whole nutmeg right here in the middle, and then you put this on top, and I just got it in something to catch the nutmeg, and then you start grinding. Okay, and there you can see the nutmeg. Oh boy, it smells so good. I love nutmeg. I love cinnamon and nutmeg together in my coffee. But if you store the whole nutmeg, you definitely need something to grind it. And this works pretty good for only $15. Your extended storage is your long-term food storage plan. It might be for 1 year's worth of food, 2, 3, whatever you have. And you should be storing at least salt in addition to your food sources. I have a video on how I store salt if you're interested. It can keep indefinitely, although it could cake up if there's moisture, but you can still use it. And we are used to salt in our food. Food without salt is, you know, kind of like hospital food used to be, really, really bland. So I don't think any of us want that. In your long-term food storage, you might want to store the spices that are what I call not renewable. I mean, I cannot grow a pepper tree in zone 5, or I can't even pronounce the type of tree that makes cloves. So here I have vacuum packed 1 black peppercorn, 1 mixed color peppercorn, and 1 clove. And I've sucked all the oxygen out, so this should keep for quite a while. You can also do it in a Mylar bag if you wish, but where you're going to store it, put it in a cool, dark spot. That's very important for the longevity of your extended spices. One more thing, if you have some spices stored, but they are starting to lose their taste, you can just double, triple, whatever the amount of spice and still be able to use them. So now we're down to the final E. E for eternity. And it's probably not really eternity, but what I mean is, are your spices a renewable resource, so to speak? Do they grow wild around your house? Are they perennials in the zone you live in? Or do you harvest the seeds or a cutting and start that plant over again and plant it outside in the spring? What do you have for your eternity spice plan? So you should really make a list. What are the spices you just can't live without? You know, for me, of course, it's salt, pepper, garlic, definitely, onions. And yes, I know onions aren't a spice or an herb, but they're a darn good seasoning, and I would hate to live without onions. And you can make onion powder for seasoning. And what else? Well, I'd like to have oregano, thyme, sage, let's see. Oh, and rosemary too. Yep, I'd like to have rosemary. Oh yeah, and I don't want to forget, I'd like to have ginger and mint and cloves, and you get the idea. Now, some of those spices just will not grow in where I live, zone 5. They may do fine where you live, especially if you live in a tropical area. So as far as black pepper goes, I'm keeping the peppercorns, I'm vacuum storing them. And the same for whole cloves and whole allspice and whole nutmeg. But I can find mint. It grows wild like a weed right by the chicken barn. And we also have chives come up every spring. Again, wild, nothing we planted. So that is nice. And then every July when I harvest my garlic, I always keep some cloves for replanting in the fall. And I'm now doing the same with potato onions, which are like garlic, kind of that you can replant them in the fall, and voila, you have a bunch of new onions in the spring. So definitely a renewable resource as long as I harvest and keep them well until I can plant them in the fall. Now, as far as rosemary, oregano, thyme, and sage go, they are not perennials in Zone 5 where I live. Instead, on what I plan to do this year, I always have a little herb garden on my deck so I can snip off some fresh herbs and when I'm cooking. But what I plan to do is late summer, I'm going to take a cutting of each of those, bring them inside, and start a plant. So I will have a plant ready in the spring to again plant out on my deck garden. So I will be able to have those renewable. And I also love hot peppers. You know, every year I plant habaneros, chili peppers, and even ghost peppers. And all of those, I can save the seeds in the fall and then start a plant early, probably late winter, and again have my beloved hot peppers in my garden. So some of the spices I love kind of meet my eternity qualification and some don't. So I'm interested to hear what you think about my 3E spice plan, and I wonder what your plan is for spices, and do you have any eternity plan for spices, that is. This is Prepper Potpourri saying please subscribe, share the knowledge, and as always, thank you so much for subscribing and supporting my channel.